The story begins with the fact that a married couple begins to have misunderstandings. The man asks Rosalina to divorce him. He insists that his wife return the surname Failston and quietly return to Brighton. The husband was ready to pay his wife compensation in the amount of 5 million gold. But the woman's opinion was unshakable. She insisted that it all belonged to her because her last name was also Filesden. The man allowed the idea that this could happen. He claimed that Rosalina did not follow an easy path. He would have gratefully accepted such an offer in her place. The woman was reading the web novel, Tyrants Demand a Divorce Because of Me. And the villain of the novel was called Rosalina Filesden. She refuses to divorce and constantly does various bad things. As a result, due to attempts to poison the main character, she is sentenced to death. The woman understood that it was just an affair, but she didn't mind being the same as the main character. On days like today, she wouldn't have had time to cross the road. The woman tried to cross the road, but was hit by a car. Someone tried to wake up the woman in her sleep. She heard a familiar name, not her own. Opening her eyes, the frightened woman saw the main character of the book she was reading. After waking up, surprised by the unfamiliar area, the woman looked at herself in the mirror. "This cannot be! This is Rosalina!" The woman looked at the wonderful beauty she saw in the mirror. Elegant clothes, pink hair color. This simply could not happen. The woman was sure that it was a dream. The beauty was knocked off the hook. Did she inhabit someone else's body? And not just someone else's, but the girl's from the novel. She was overwhelmed with emotions. Rosalina heard from her husband the words she had read in the novel before the accident. He firmly demanded a divorce, and he said that there is no point in delaying the time. The man promised that if they divorced quietly, he would pay her 5 million gold as compensation. The woman just burst into tears in response to her husband's words. Arzentian said quietly that there was no point in crying, and tears would do her no good. Rosalina, after calculating how much it would be in Korean won, was almost speechless. It was 50 billion won. That's a crazy amount. The man began to say that everyone should be where they belong. Rosalina nodded that she understood everything and wanted to sign the document. The man couldn't believe his eyes as he watched the woman sign. She immediately got up, but said that everything was over between them and her husband was free. Rosalina waved to him and went outside. A coachman was waiting for Rosalind outside, who politely asked where to take her. The elegant lady decided that she wanted to visit the Duke of Brighton's mansion. Fate has changed a lot. Ever since Rosalina was born, the Brighton family's fortunes have been slowly deteriorating. Perhaps because of this reason, Rosalina was called the Trouble of Brighton. The girl, even as a child, fought to be loved. But in response, I only heard whispers about how ominous she is. This is how Rosalina renounced love. The only man she could not refuse was Arzentian Filesden. But as a result, they still broke up. Rosalina understood that there would be a lot of noise around the divorce. The woman was to be executed for trying to poison the main character of the novel, but she decided that she would not die just like that. Rosalina firmly decided that no matter what happens, she will make every effort to get a divorce. After all, she now has a new life. Restoration of old and broken items is complete. Crystal products, carpets with an engraved Brighton seal. The Duke's assistant was reading the list, until suddenly they were interrupted by a maid who announced Rosalina's arrival. The Duke of Brighton was not very happy about his daughter's arrival, but only told her to go back. The maid, feeling uncomfortable, said that the lady was very persistent. The Duke, calling Rosalina impudent, told her to wait outside the door. He also warned the servant to take away all the chairs and not to give water to this woman. The Duke, having finished working, was forced to accept Rosalina. The woman understood why the father was so reluctant to meet. She must have really caused him a lot of trouble once. Rosalina tried to appear confident. Judging by everything, this is how a father punishes his adult daughter for mistakes. The woman read how the Brighton family went bankrupt. She really wanted to find a way to help them. Rosalina had such a privilege because she inhabited the body of a character from the book. The woman tried to keep herself in her hands. Even if their negotiations go badly, it won't be over for her. Rosalina went to her father. He was stunned by his daughter's patience because this is not characteristic of her. The father, with an angry look, looked at his daughter and asked what she had forgotten here, naming her quite officially, the Duchess of Fieldsden. The woman immediately informed that she came here with one request. Here, Women did not have the right to make decisions. If you want to divorce, you need to get permission from both your husband and your father. Rosalina had to be strong because it was about big money. She undoubtedly believed that she would get her way. The woman mustered all her strength and proudly said that she wanted to get permission for a divorce. The father was puzzled by such words, but thought that his daughter had lost her mind. The husband reminded his daughter of the recent events. Rosalina was crazy about Arsentian. She shouted to her father that the trouble of Brighton would leave there by herself, and also promised that after she got married, she would never return here. That night she stole the family seal and got married, and now it is not known for what reasons he is returning. Father was angry. The Duke told his daughter that he was no longer surprised by anything. Rosalina convinced her father that she had changed since then. She offered her father to conclude a contract. The Duke looked at his daughter in surprise. The deal was that she promises that she can help revive the entire Brighton family. But this is on the condition that he gives permission for a divorce. The woman confidently said that things would get better in Brighton, and she will prove it in a year. Rosalina sincerely put her hand on her heart and swore by Brighton. The Duke understood that his daughter had groundless confidence and courage. He concluded that she had not changed, but decided to give her a chance. Father asked the butler to prepare a room for Rosalina. Dvoretsky, surprised, wanted to say something, but the Duke interrupted him and said that he would not speak twice. The butler had no choice but to bow to the Duchess and escort her to the room. Rosalina, coming to her room, fell on the bed from exhaustion. She was glad that today's attempt was successful. In her past life, the woman refused to go to university and did not get out of debt. And so, there was an unexpected chance to live a second life. Rosalina understood that such luck would not happen again. Therefore, she could not miss this chance. Moreover, she was sure that she could do it. All the Duchess needed was to act differently than Rosalina did in the novel. The woman realized with a smile that it was easier than her part-time jobs. The morning has come. The Duke was having breakfast, and the butler was not far away. The man asked the Duke why he decided to agree, because the Duchess had caused him so much trouble in her time. The Duke noticed that his daughter was sitting silently in the guest room. Earlier, when she was made to wait, she broke everything she could get her hands on, and after that, the room was a total mess. The Duke told the butler that he wanted to give his daughter a chance, but he will be the last. Father seemed to feel that something had changed in the Duchess. The servant entered the still sleepy Rosalina's room. She offered the Duchess a drink in the bath. The woman, of course, did not refuse. But suddenly, while in the bathroom, the maid accidentally touched the Duchess. The poor servant's eyes filled with fear at the suddenness, and she begged to be forgiven. The servant screamed in fear that she had committed a mortal sin and begged the Duchess to simply release her, but not to take her life, because she had debts and 9 children. But Rosalina only replied that nothing terrible had happened. The maid was sincerely grateful to the Duchess. Her surprise and joy knew no bounds. She did not believe that she was simply forgiven. After all, Rosalina was not so kind before. After leaving the bathroom, the maid immediately shared with her partner the events that had just taken place. But the colleague just said that it couldn't be true, and she just had a feeling. Rosalina looked at her reflection in the soapy water. She got goosebumps. She's still not quite used to her new look. The maid stood and discussed the latest news that was in the newspaper. When the Duchess entered the room, one of the girls had a newspaper fall to the floor. Rosalina picked it up and looked at what was written there. On the front page of the newspaper was written about the divorce of the Duke of Fileston. Rosalina unfolded to read the full text. The sole heir of the Fileston family, which is considered the most powerful in the empire, is Arsentian Fileston. He is the youngest swordsman. All the battles in which he participated ended with his victory, but not Rosalina's marriage, which was more like the war he was trying to end. I wonder who will fill the soon-to-be vacated seat. The maid brought a letter for Rosalina. It seems that she still had friends, despite her bad character. It was a letter from the Duke of Fileston. He was moved by the fact that Rosalina calmly reacted to the divorce. It was a check for 1 million gold. That's 10 billion won. So far, it was a check for 20% of the promised amount. Arsentian also wrote in the letter that he hoped that the Duchess had not changed her mind. Rosalina was very happy. After all, she now has even more motivation. The woman immediately asked the maid to bring her some inconspicuous cape. Rosalina got dressed and left. An auction was taking place outside. During these minutes, they played Tears of the Wind, which the Duchess really wanted. The woman needed them in order to remove the curse from Leodor. Rosalina felt relaxed and satisfied, because the Tears of the Wind were almost in her pocket. But the woman was quick to draw conclusions. The stakes had already been raised very high. A little more, and she simply would not have enough money. Rosalina was upset. After all, a man in a mask constantly interrupted its price at the auction. The Duchess had 1,000,000 gold in her hands, but there were almost none left, because the stake was already very high. The masked man was already offering 9,000 gold, and Rosalina tried to make a last bet for all the money. It was 1,000,000 gold. Oh wonder! The vial was in the Duchess's hands. The stranger caught up with Rosalina and offered her a deal. The man tried to convince the Duchess that it wasn't just a pretty thing, and he didn't think it would be useful to her. The stranger offered Rosalina 5,000,000 gold for Tears of the Wind. The Duchess found the stranger very suspicious. He, having such money, could win the auction and not ask her now for a bottle. Rosalina told the man that she knew what the bottle was for, and there was no need to label her. She explained that she wanted to help her sick brother. The Duchess, no matter what it cost her, did not plan to repress what she wanted so much. The man felt quite sick. It was like some kind of attack. The stranger only said that he understood her and apologized. A carriage was already waiting for Rosalina, but she politely handed him a handkerchief because the man's forehead was sweating. The stranger did not want to take the handkerchief. That woman wiped his face herself. Rosalina insisted that he keep the handkerchief to himself. The man was holding the handkerchief back, but Rosalina was already hurrying to the carriage. The guy took off his mask when the woman was gone. The stranger noticed that Rosalina had changed. The Duke sat and worked with documents. Suddenly, a worried maid came in and told that Mrs. Rosalina had made a noise in front of the young master's room. The Duke was very angry and shouted his daughter's name as loudly as he could. The Duke chastised himself for being so foolish as to give his daughter a second chance after her betrayal. He, being very angry, was heading towards Rosalina. Long, long ago, Brighton lost two treasures: Beatrice, the housekeeper of the family, and Brighton's very ancient patron. At that moment, when little Rosalina broke a branch of the fairy tree, the angry fairy cast a curse. Leodor fell into an eternal sleep, and instead of Rosalina, Beatrice, who protected her, was cursed. After a severe shock, Beatrice went into premature labor, and as a result, Beatrice died. Only young Rosalina remained, who lost her memory from the shock. The only person who saw everything was cursed. It's a miracle she survived. It was Eliza. She worked as Beatrice's maid. Rosalina came to Leodor and wanted to give him a potion, but Eliza did not want the woman to give Leodor anything suspicious. The Duchess wanted the best and wanted to prove it. Eliza was adamant. She sternly said that if the Duchess did not want to go to meet her, then she had no product. Eliza immediately called Dorothy. Two maids approached the Duchess and tried to take her out of the room. The Duke ran to them as well. Eliza complained to the Duke that the Duchess was trying to give Leodor something suspicious. There was a tense atmosphere in the room. Rosalina, out of desperation, drank some of the Tears of the Wind potion herself to prove its safety. Rosalina tried to explain once again that the potion was absolutely safe and non-poisonous. The woman claimed that this should help Leodor, but the Duke and Eliza looked at Rosalina quite skeptically. The Duchess said that if they did not believe her, they could trust Filesden. After all, they were an incredible family. In fact, the woman read about the Tears of the Wind in a secret office where only the head of the clan can enter. It was written about in the novel. Rosalina claimed that she had a lot of time to learn something new. She spent 3 years in solitude, incredulous. Eliza began to tell the Duke that it was impossible for his daughter to get where only the head of the family could go. The Duke was fed up with the loud shouting, so he ordered everyone to stop talking. The father knew that his daughter always got what she wanted, so he allowed her to give the potion to Leodor. Eliza was unhappy with this decision. Rosalina looked worriedly at Leodor, who was lying motionless. His skin looked pale and sickly. The woman understood that she had to save Leodor from the curse and win the trust of the Duke of Brighton. All the same, Rosalina was scared, even though she was waiting for this moment. She was afraid that the potion might not work. And what then? The Duchess opened the vial and poured the potion into Leodor's mouth. Everyone looked at Leodor, waiting for what would happen next. The man immediately averted his eyes. There was no limit to everyone's surprise. The Duke, Duchess, and Eliza could not believe their eyes. Leodor whispered the name Rose in surprise. He took his sister by the hand and said that she had already become a real lady. But suddenly, he closed his eyes again. It was the curse of the fairies. Rosalina did not stop talking to her brother, but she did not know if he heard her. She only promised him that she would try to do everything possible so that he would wake up as soon as possible. The father offered his daughter to choose what she wanted, maybe dresses or jewelry. The Duke was happy to bring her anything she wanted. Herzog recalled that Rosalina really wanted a summer house as a child, and, being desperate, her father was ready to buy it for his daughter. He was beginning to believe that if his daughter tried, Leodor might wake up. Rosalina tried to explain to her father that she was Leodora's sister and did what she had to do, and she didn't need any excuses. The Duchess was about to leave, but decided to ask her father for something. Her request was for the Duke to spend more time with Leodor, and maybe he would feel better. The father looked at the huge portrait of his daughter that hung on the wall. She was still so small there, but now she is a charming lady. The man felt that his daughter had changed a lot. The maid accidentally spilled a bucket of water on Rosaline's dress. The servant was very apologetic, but asked not to kill her. But Rosalina just smiled and said that everything is fine. The father was shocked by his daughter's answer. He decided that in the Falston family, the daughter was quite intelligent. Alina was very angry that Rosalina was granted a divorce and returned to Brighton, and it's all because of the desire to help Leodor. She did not know what to do. Eliza wanted to drive away Rosalina at any cost. She nervously poked at the new servant who was cleaning her shoes. Cruel Eliza began to beat the unfortunate maid with a whip. She also demanded that the servant say thank you more often. The next day, Rosalina came to her father to ask if he would give her permission for a divorce. Brighton gave the go-ahead. The father decided to return his daughter's surname and all the rights she had. The Duke also asked Rosalina to call him father. The girl did not even hear the last words. She was incredibly happy. The balance of the monetary compensation was 40 million won. This was not enough. As paradoxical as it may sound, more money was needed to save 4 million gold. In this world, divorce is considered a shame for a woman. That is why there is a tradition that a woman returns to her family and tries to remarry by arrangement. In the first marriage, the woman's property, brought from her family, remains with her. But remarriage means, thank you for accepting me. And the dowry remains with the husband's family. There is only one way: buy the title and become independent. Rosalina needed money for this. Fate changed more than 3 times. To activate the system, the energy of the Pioneer Destiny is created. The Summoner summoning items from the Unknown World feature is awakening. Rosalina was sure that she could change her fate and become rich. The energy of fate accumulates with each deviation from the given path. She needed to raise the level of appeal with the help of accumulated fate energy, and it was necessary to unlock new opportunities. Rosalina read everything carefully, trying to understand. It was a game in the genre of romantic fiction that the woman had heard about before. Rosalina saw in her dreams the road of the future lined with flowers. Then, changing her mind, she decided that it was made of shiny gold. According to the events of the novel, the Duchess arrived at the mine and met the main character of the novel, Daisy. This mine was given to Rosalina for her 14th birthday, but now it is abandoned. As a sign of acquaintance and friendship, Rosalina presented Daisy with a document of ownership of the mine. Daisy was terribly embarrassed to take such an expensive gift, but Rosalina insisted. This place had real value. It was believed that the Cleaning Lake was endowed with the power of fairies. The lake was beautiful and transparent. You could see your reflection there. Rosalina, deciding that Daisy liked the lake so much, pushed her there. Rosalina knew that if Daisy even managed to get out of the lake, she wouldn't be able to escape anywhere. It was a well-thought-out trap that took into account hypothermia due to the low temperature and the tangled passages of the mine. Maybe it's the main character's buffs. But Daisy safely descended to the bottom, where she saw a large number of hidden magic stones. The main character, Calyx, came to her aid, thanks to which they were able to reveal their feelings for each other. It was in this episode that the main character paid attention to what bad deeds Rosalina was doing. The woman knew what was in the novel, so she wanted to avoid everything bad and do only good. All subsequent life depended on her choice. Rosalina knew she had to go into the lake and get 10 billion or do nothing, and the Duchess firmly decided to jump. At the moment of the jump, Rosalina was afraid that something would go wrong. And if only the main character Daisy was capable of this. Fear gripped the Duchess. The events took place in the Shadow Information Guild, Hennes. The man asked what about the results of the experiments. The girl replied that the experiments of magicians and shamans showed that it was the most ordinary handkerchief. The man, having listened, replied that the girl should go. The man was still wondering what Rosalina could have done with that handkerchief. The best doctor of the continent, the strongest magician of the Magic Tower, and a shaman who is known for his bad reputation, could not end the suffering of the man. The insanity of the Fileston family, passed down through the generations, is truly terrifying. The man's body seemed to be torn to pieces, a terrible curse that pulls you like metal chains. The man did not stop thinking, what did Rosalina do with this handkerchief? The woman is a leash who used Fileston to gain power over people. Rosalina was ready to do anything for this, even to confess her love to him. But at the moment when they last saw each other, she looked completely different. Suddenly, Arzentian's assistant said that Mrs. Fileston was now in the guest room. The man himself was not himself from what he heard. He decided to put on a mask. The Duchess of Fileston, smiling sweetly, entered the office. She said that she had come to get her handkerchief. The man was quite surprised why she had come here. And Rosalina, with a smile, said that she is creating the foundation of her bright future. The Duchess did not give details. The man wondered what kind of secret it was. He was overcome with curiosity. The events took place 2 years ago on the border of the Empire. Duke Fileston received an overdue letter from the mansion. There was information that the Duchess was dying, and it was necessary to turn back. The Duke was angry because he was betrothed to a woman whose face he had not seen. This woman pretended to be a duchess, and now she dies? All he knew was that her name was Rosalina Brighton. The Duke, not really wanting this, decided to return to the mansion. He decided to first quietly look to see if it was true. But to his great surprise, this woman did not look like a dying woman. Rosalina gave instructions to the servants in displeasure. She chose the color of the curtains that she liked. She wanted black ones to make everything look mournful. And when the maid said that blacks would be hard to find now, the Duchess was simply mad. The Duke understood that this was some kind of trap. Why all this circus? Although Arzentian hid behind the wall, the Duchess somehow knew he was nearby and called out to him. The Duke decided to immediately ask why she had arranged such a circus. The woman only replied that she wanted to see him as soon as possible, and she decided that the news of her dying condition would draw his attention, at least for a short time. Rosalina said that they were bound by fate, and she knew it when she first saw the man. She asked him not to go to the battlefield, but to stay with her. The man pushed Rosalina away. He was very angry. He knew that the Duchess was a selfish and intolerable woman, and even thought of killing her. A small effort of the man's hand was enough to break her fragile neck. The woman just hugged Arzentian tenderly and asked if his insomnia had worsened, because it is dangerous. And she, with a light movement of her hand, sent him to sleep. When the Duke awoke, Rosalina was lying beside him. He didn't know how long he slept or what she did to him. This woman was dangerous, and Arzentian didn't know what else she was capable of. The Duke returned to the present reality. Rosalina waved her hand in front of him, because she saw that the man was thinking deeply about something, and asked again about the handkerchief. He replied that at the moment he did not have a handkerchief. To get into the shadow organization Hennes, you need to find an antique shop at the end of the alley, closest to the statue of the first emperor. When the woman came there, she said that she wanted to meet with the head of the Hennes Guild. Arzentian confidently said that he did not have a handkerchief. It seemed to Rosalina that he wanted to throw her out from the very beginning, but she decided to ask if he had lost her at times. Rosalina felt sad and angry at the same time, because this was the only gift from her husband. Arzentian, being in a mask, knew that he did not give the woman any handkerchief. It was an ordinary handkerchief without embroidery. Arzentian politely apologized, but asked when exactly the woman had received this gift. But Rosalina was not confused, saying in response that this is the work of the Hennes Guild, because they are the masters of information gathering. Rosalina did not like such rude and incomprehensible questions. The woman said that she had higher hopes for this place, but now she is disappointed. Herzog understood that she had other goals. A scarf is just a cover. The Duchess slyly told the stranger that it didn't seem like their company was worthy of being the best guild in the empire. The man decided not to object. Herzog wanted to compensate for the loss of the handkerchief with the services of Hennes. The man also said that he would have the opportunity to find out something. After thinking about it, Rosalina agreed. The woman proudly said that she was ready to make concessions. The Duke aptly said that Rosalind needed the money and the title to get a divorce and protect herself from remarriage. Rosalina did not want a second marriage of convenience. She shared the secret that she wants to accumulate funds under a different name, buy a title, and live alone. The Duchess believed that the man thinks well with his head, and there is no need for him to chew everything. The Duchess saw this white mask that the man was wearing and immediately recognized it. It belongs to the master of the Hens Guild. This is a high-class organization that you can rely on in any matter, but they may refuse even if they are showered with gold. It was risky, but Rosalina was satisfied with her result. Also, the Duchess thought that if you look closely, the husband's appearance is wonderful. Rosalina felt strange feelings, as if she had seen this man before. The woman was so lost in thought that she did not hear what the man was saying. She accidentally dropped a cup of tea on the floor. The woman almost fell, but the man restrained her with his strong hands. Assistant Maurice entered the office. The head of the guild, embarrassed, immediately asked her to bring all the documents on obtaining a different name. A list of titles for sale was also required. The man decided to ask what Rosalina would pay him for her services. The services of this guild were quite expensive. The woman placed a bag of precious stones, which she had collected with her own hands, on the table. Rosalina wondered why the man was wearing a mask that covered most of his face. The woman decided that maybe the mask covered his scar. Rosalina knew nothing about the guildmaster. After all, the novel was not about him. This puzzled the woman. The Duchess caught herself thinking that she was not thinking at all about what was needed. And you have to pull yourself together. Rosalind had better turn her attention to other things now. For example, for money. She decided to sum up. First, a system window appeared. Of course, only Rosalina saw him. Summoner skills have been unlocked, and Rosalina became an F-level summoner. Last night, the Duchess luckily had a summoner skill, so she tried to get different things. Rosalina wanted endlessly to get a silver bar. No matter how hard she tried, she failed. The summoner could only get items that matched his level. The woman felt crushed because all her attempts were in vain. Rosalina realized that it was necessary to summon some small but necessary thing that corresponded to her level. The Duchess began to think about what she would try to summon. There were rumors in the city that the couple was breaking up. People thought that Rosalina did a terrible job with the role of the Duchess. People even assumed that the woman was simply kicked out, but she was uncomfortable talking about it, and so she talks about the divorce. Some believed that this title did not suit her from the very beginning. The women also gossiped that Count Bronzen's daughter was supposed to be the Duchess from the beginning. The daughter of this count found herself next to the gossipers, and could not believe her ears that they were gossiping about her because she could be a Duchess now. The women only sincerely sympathized with her, since the evil Rosalina prevented the creation of a couple shortly before the engagement. The women continued to gossip and sympathize with this unfortunate lady. They also called Rosalina a thief. The women only advised Mrs. Bronzena to go to the Duke of Arzentian. Perhaps he is waiting for her. The gossiping women saw Rosalina nearby, and knowing her character, they already imagined how the woman would burst into flames now, and it would completely destroy her reputation. Miss Bronzena decided that Rosalina had no right to take her future husband away from her and take her place. Bronzena decided not to forgive this. Bronzena, not believing her eyes, watched Rosalina sitting and drinking tea. The women asked the Duchess why she had come here. They thought she had lost her mind, because divorce is not something to be proud of. A woman named Hannah continued to insult and call Rosalina names. That woman, behaving like a lady, sat silently and drank tea, as if they were not talking about her. Hannah went too far, but she couldn't stop her feelings. She dared to offer Rosalind to marry Count Bartner, who is already over 60 and has been looking for a fourth wife for a long time. Mrs. Bronzena begged Hannah to stop. Rosalina felt a pain in her chest because she had never heard such terrible insults addressed to her. The woman felt sick. Had she been the former Rosalina, Hannah would surely have been finished in an instant at the very beginning of such a dirty conversation. Rosalina's feelings must have remained in this body. The woman wanted to leave there calmly, but, getting angry, Rosalina decided to argue with the women about the gossip, because it was all delusional. The Duchess firmly and proudly asked Hannah if the woman was responsible for her words. Hannah turned pale with fear. Rosalina also turned to Mrs. Bronzina with the question of whether the woman really wanted to get engaged to the Duke of Fielston. Miss Bronzina was silent in response. An angry Rosalina realized that it was all gossip, and no one knows the truth, but for some reason she is accused on the basis of gossip. 4 years ago, the Duke came to Bronson's mansion. It was about engagement. The Duke of Fielston seemed determined. He said he would consider the offer. After listening to Mrs. Bronzina, Rosalina came to the conclusion that she was purposely spreading false information so that everyone would talk bad about her. It appeared that Rosalina had stolen Mrs. Bronzina's husband, but this was not true at all. Rosalina proudly and confidently informed everyone that she was in no mood to quarrel. She also said to Miss Bronzini's face that a woman has no right to call her a thief. Rosalina told Mrs. Bronzina that a woman lacked knowledge and she should have a woman to look up to. Mrs. Bronzina was very angry at such words and swung at Rosalina with all her might. The Duchess seemed to feel the memories of the real Rosalina. She immediately grabbed Bronzina's hand, not wanting to offend. Rosalina felt that she had bent the stick, but she didn't show it. She explained that you need to behave normally and not disturb other people. Herzeginya understood that she was stuck, but her struggle was not senseless. The woman was able to figure out how to use the skill. She decided to hurry home and try again. On the way, Rosalina met the guildmaster, who asked where she was in such a hurry. As it turned out, he was just carrying the drawn-up contract and report to the Duchess. The woman did not understand the reason why he decided to bring the documents himself, because she could come to him and collect them. It seemed to the guildmaster that there was some misunderstanding in the café, but Rosalina was in no hurry to share the details with him and wanted to see him off as soon as possible. The Duchess took up the documents. She was not interested in interim reports. She was a little annoyed. It seemed to the Duchess that the master of the guild liked her, so he came to her with the documents. She decided that the man could not resist the rich beauty. The guildmaster had no sense of magic or other skills from the Duchess. The woman asked him to call her just Rosalina, not Mrs. Fielston. The guildmaster proudly said that the divorce was almost over. The Duchess suggested an option, Miss Brighton, but the man flatly refused. He said that when the divorce process is over, then he will call her that. Rosalina was puzzled. Why was this man so worried about such a small thing? Now she was absolutely certain that she liked the guildmaster. The Duchess knew that such behavior was definitely not Rosalind's. The woman decided to simply consider her husband a business partner. The guildmaster bought a chicken kebab for Rosalina. She didn't even know that there was such a thing in this world. That woman did not want to be in debt to anyone, so she decided to pay for herself. Rosalina's eyes widened. Delicious fruit juice was also sold here. There were also strange sculptures in this world. The Duchess, being in a wonderful mood, bought all sorts of things. Of course, she also kindly offered the guildmaster a treat, but he, smiling, refused. The man looked fascinated at Rosalina. She became completely different. He liked this version of his wife. The man behaved very nicely and politely with Rosalina. She's all over the place. The woman really wanted to see what the man was hiding under the mask. She was sure he was handsome. Rosalina tried to force herself to think not about nonsense, but about important matters. She decided to try to summon something small and useful of her own level. The Duchess, after thinking a little, decided that a rose would do. She scolded herself for not thinking of it sooner. This world was just a bed of roses. The inhabitants of the empire, regardless of status, are obsessed with them. If the object is in any way connected with the rose, then its price has risen at least 2 times. Even the girls whom Rosalina saw in the café had rose decorations with them. Suddenly, the Duchess will be able to summon a flower of an unusual color that is not found in the empire? The woman concentrated and began to summon a rose. She was incredibly happy, because after a short period of time, a red flower was lying in front of her. Rosalina sat and admired the rose. She was incredibly happy that she finally got the desired result. The Duchess decided that at this rate she would become rich. Taking a closer look, the Duchess was disappointed that the rose was not real, but artificial. With her level, she probably wasn't capable of more. The Duke of Brighton, sitting in his office, worked with documents. Dvoretsky noted that the house was quite calm. The Duke asked him about Rosalina. Dvoretsky said that she is doing well. Their conversation was interrupted by Rosalina, who just entered the office. She came to discuss something with her father. The butler felt a little funny, because usually such behavior was not characteristic of a woman. Rosalina noticed that the men were looking at her in surprise. She decided the point was that she hadn't knocked on the door. The Duchess decided to tell her father that his birthday was coming soon. The daughter gently and caringly said that she had never given gifts to her father, so she decided that it was time to start this wonderful tradition. Rosalina, from the bottom of her heart, handed her father a small gift box, inside which was a very beautiful pen. A woman carefully chose a gift for her father. As it turned out, the pen was not real. It was an imitation of a pen made of gold. Father was sincerely happy for such a generous gift. The Duchess also tried to convince her father that she had really changed for the better. The Duke thought for a moment. Is he worth such a nice gift from this child? The man chastised himself for always turning his back on his daughter. But she had never behaved so well and discreetly before. The Duke almost cried, because he realized that he had been a bad father. He was a man who could not be trusted. The man was upset by his own thoughts. The silence in the room was interrupted by Alina, who came to tell the Duke something. At that time, Rosalina, looking at her own home, reasoned that there was so much that stood in her way. Rosalina had an irresistible desire to get the best roses and decorate her mother's room with them, who was very fond of flowers during her life. But it was not possible. No one was allowed to enter Mrs. Beatrice's room, without exception. One of the maids decided that Rosalina did not have any power, and it was necessary to take a little time. Then the Duke will see, in an absurd situation, how his daughter is trying to break into the room of precious Beatrice. After all, Rosalina's hobby is to break things. She was already breaking Beatrice's things. The maid did not think that the Duke would be able to forgive his daughter. How evil do you have to be to ask a maid who is cursed because of roses to make a bouquet? If Rosalina continues in this spirit, she will definitely be kicked out. Meanwhile, the Duchess saw that the maid was waiting for someone. Rosalina thought that it was her father, and she decided that they would wait for him together. Such events were not according to the maid's plan. She was a little upset. Rosalina understood that she had not done anything wrong today that the servant could report to her father. After all, this evil woman really wanted to put sticks in the wheels of the Duchess. Rosalina heard her father shout her name in displeasure. The Duchess became motionless, but did not understand what she was guilty of. The father grabbed his daughter by the shoulders and very unfriendly asked if she was not in pain today. The Duke was more than sure that the daughter went to her mother's room, but it was not so. Rosalina wanted to know more details about the beginning of the novel. Tyrants demand a divorce because of me. Rosalina wanted to know why she couldn't go into Beatrice's room, so she started reading the novel to find the answer. In the novel, the Duchess wrote a letter to Daisy, stating that she was in danger. The women decided to meet. Rosalina wanted to clear up a misunderstanding about the mine. The Duchess invited Daisy to tour the Brighton estate. Daisy noticed that Rosalina was not looking well and advised her to rest a little. But the Duchess replied that everything was fine and remembered the events of pushing Daisy into the lake. When Rosalina accidentally pushed Daisy into the lake, she immediately went to call someone for help, but later came across a large number of magic stones. Rosalina told Daisy that she was jealous of her. Daisy sincerely said that everything happened thanks to Rosalind. The Duchess thanked her and was going to thank her with a gift. Rosalina took Daisy to her late mother's room. "It is forbidden to enter here." After these words, Daisy felt a little uneasy. Rosalina, showing her true face, pushed Daisy and locked her in the room. Later, Daisy wondered where she was. As it turned out, Daisy had a fairy sign in her hands that had long since disappeared. The Duke was terribly angry. This is how Rosalina framed Daisy. The fairy sign is a Brighton family heirloom that cannot be released. And for this, you need to enter Beatrice's room. This sign of fairies chose a new owner. It was Daisy. Today's time. The father told his daughter that Anthony is a child who suffers from the curse of the rose, which is spread throughout the empire. Even a light touch to a rose can be fatal. Rosalina did not read in the novel that one touch can create a threat to life. The novel was not about that at all. The maids were on their guard, for Rosalina had made the servant attend to the roses and now insisted on entering Beatrice's room. They believed that she was caught red-handed today, and it is not known if she had been there before. Things have been going missing from Beatrice's room lately. The servants did not know who was doing it. They claimed that people don't change with Rosalina in mind. The Duke decided to stand up for his daughter and pointed to the maid in her place. The man worriedly said that the maid should first of all look after the safety of his daughter. He also emphasized that Rosalina also suffers from the curse of the rose. The Duke did not want to hear any excuses. He believed that the servant was neglecting his duties. Unexpectedly for everyone, the Duke ordered this maid to be sent to the dungeon until his decision was made. Rosalina was glad that she had come up with such a wonderful plan. The main part remained, the Duke himself. The Duchess held out an artificial flower to her father. She said that with such a rose, you cannot worry about safety. The Duke was surprised, because it was the first time he had seen something like this. Rosalina, looking at her father with a tender look, asked to leave this bouquet in her mother's room. The Duke waved to his daughter to follow him. They stopped in front of a portrait of incredible beauty. It depicted Beatrice and Rosalina. Later, the father gave his daughter a small tour of the room. Later, Rosalina was able to take the box in which the sign of the fairies lay. He was simply amazing. The woman could not fall in love with him. It was raining heavily outside. On the way, Rosalina met the master of the guild, who kindly offered her a way to the carriage. He wanted to take the Duchess where she needed to go, as it was not very pleasant to walk in such rain. The Duchess said she needed to get to the Duke of Foilston's mansion, and I sincerely thanked in advance. In the carriage, the master of the guild asked the Duchess to return the cloak he had lent her. Rosalina awkwardly asked if the husband had a relationship with any woman. The man replied that he did not. So Rosalina offered to return the cloak when she washed it. Rosalina boasted that she would get her freedom sooner than she thought. The man wondered what this woman was up to. The man told Rosalina that the divorce was annulled, and asked for the check that the Duke gave her. But the Duchess did not have it, because she spent everything at the auction. The cunning master of the guild explained that the check serves as a notarial proof of divorce, and it is impossible to divorce without him. Rosalina began to say that it was nonsense. Suddenly, the man tore off the mask, and she saw her husband there. The Duchess, barely restraining her tears, claimed that they were ending their marriage by mutual consent. The Duke, who knows all the laws, bypassed what he thought was a cunning woman. He claimed that Rosalina secured the wedding by lying about spending the night with him. The Duke was offended. After all, she was the first to start this war. Herzog assumed that Rosalina might later change her mind and appeal the divorce decision on the pretext of the lack of a check. The man believed that he did not need such problems. He asked Rosalina to treat this with understanding. Upset, Rosalina did not know what to do. Desperately, she came up with the idea of writing a receipt that she would not try to annul the divorce, and notarize it. The Duke thought about it, because it was a great solution to the problem. The Duke sternly told the Duchess to come another time, but already with the check. Rosalina was incredibly upset, because her husband trampled on her efforts. Rosalina was fined for an unsuccessful attempt at divorce. She was completely crushed. She had to pay for the antics of her predecessor. The Duchess tried to believe that this was not the end. She immediately went to the Hens Guild and immediately demanded a meeting with its head. The woman angrily flew into the office and demanded that the man do something. The guildmaster asked Rosalina what the purpose of her visit was. At first, the woman pretended to be sick from hunger and asked for something to eat. The husband found the Duchess's behavior quite strange. "You can expect anything from this woman." The guildmaster excitedly tried to explain to the woman that this place was hidden from all eyes. For this reason, there are not many workers here, and the food, accordingly, will not be as tasty as you would like. The man continued to deceive the Duchess. He explained that wines could not suit the noble lady's tastes. Rosalina interrupted the man and told him to talk less and bring food faster. A few minutes later, delicious and nutritious food was on the table. Trouble goes away when warm bread and butter arrives. The aromatic mushroom soup begged to be eaten, and sweet honey to taste. Rosalina tasted the food with pleasure. The man scared the Duchess so much with his words that the woman thought she would only get dry and moldy bread. But as a result, luxurious food. The one who appeared in this body was never a picky eater. The guildmaster watched the woman enjoy her meal in silence. In the end, he couldn't stand it, but said that there is etiquette. Rosalina, without thinking for a long time, stuffed bread and butter into her husband's mouth so that he would talk less. She, with a smile, asked if he liked it. The master of the guild, having tasted it, replied that he had had enough of it. The Duke wondered if this woman had always been like this. He decided that she would call him a brute and refuse to eat. He pictured in his imagination that Rosalina would first get upset, then overturn the table. Rosalina, whom the guildmaster knew before, would do as he imagined. But was she then her true self? The man's thoughts were confused. Rosalina offered her husband a drink and get down to business. Unexpectedly for him, the Duchess offered him a business, and the woman offered an artificial rose as the main item of business. But one moment, the rose fell from his hands. The man shouted, "Curse of the rose!" But then he realized that the rose was not real, but it looked quite believable. This flower was much better than the real one because it did not threaten curses. This was the plan for successful sales. Together, they decided that if they made the product premium by controlling production, the price could skyrocket. The master of the guild, having assessed the situation, decided to offer Rosalina to sign a contract with Hennis. They successfully began to negotiate terms. The next morning, Rosalina woke up to the wonderful singing of birds, but she noticed that there was no one in her room. The woman called Antony's maid, but there was silence in response. Since the main servant was closed and Rosalina's group of haters hadn't disbanded yet, no one wanted to go into her room to clean up. Rosalina sat on the stairs and watched the servants. After a while, they all gathered and left, paying no attention to the Duchess. Given the fact that she was the daughter of their employer, the women were not afraid to leave. The Duchess did not understand where the maids had such self-confidence. They seemed to have strong support. One of the maids did speak to Rosalina, but it was just a note to keep the Duchess from walking around the estate in her pajamas. Rosalina wondered who was behind all this. After all, these women could not independently decide to actually ignore the Duchess. Antony seems to have forgotten who she is talking to. The servant asked if the woman did not get tired of sitting in front of the mirror for so long every day. Rosalina was angry at such words. The Duchess convinced the servants that every hour, minute, and second she looks at herself in a new way, and that's great. Antony was silent in response. Antony was about to leave the room, but Rosalina stopped her because she wanted to discuss something with her. Antony looked at the woman with interest. The Duchess said that lately she's been having nightmares. The dreams were that Rosalina opens her eyes in an unknown place, which she sees for the first time, and shouts at some man. For some reason, this breaks a woman's heart. Antony listened attentively to the Duchess. Rosalina, interrupting her conversation, tried to remember what this man called her in her dream. Much to Antony's surprise, the Duchess suddenly said she wanted to take a walk and think things over. Rosalina immediately ran out of the room, saying that she would return in the evening. The Duchess used to think that the master of Hennis was a mysterious stranger, but it was too easy to meet him. The man came to Rosalina because he wanted to talk to her. He politely offered Mrs. Filsden his hand. It was interesting to Rosalina that it was not the market that brought her husband. The guildmaster explained that everything is logical because people come here when they want to start their own business. The Duchess was very happy with what she heard because it was about their joint business. The woman decided to keep her husband company, and I wondered what their plans were. The guildmaster explained that the market and real estate needs to be researched first. Rosalina's eyes lit up at the idea. She imagined how she would sit in the office for reports, or they could hire additional workers. The Duchess was more than confident that their business would be quite successful. The guildmaster pulled the hood over the Duchess's head and warned her that if she was going to go with him, she should not take it off her head under any circumstances. The man insisted that Rosalina be careful, and for the future, she should take no less than 5 bodyguards with her. He also ordered the woman not to disappear suddenly. Meanwhile, Eliza was incredibly angry because all her plans were falling apart. After all, she still had to suffer a little then. Leodore never regained consciousness, and her right hand, Dorothy, was in the dungeon. And it's all because of Rosalina. Elena, scrolling through recent events in her head, considered what to do next. The woman came up with a cunning plan. She took one of the vials that were well hidden and decided to act as soon as possible. Rosalina, taking her time, was contentedly taking a bath. She had a busy day today, so the woman really wanted to rest a little. Eliza Brighton, after the death of Duchess Beatrice, received the greatest benefit. She became a duchess from an ordinary maid. As the only witness to the events, she helped destroy Rosalina's reputation more than anyone else. Although Leodore is not her biological son, she cares for him as her own. She also seemed to worry about her daughter before. This meant that Eliza was only pretending to care for her own benefit. Rosalina forced herself to pull herself together because there was nowhere to retreat. Her whole life depended on her every choice. The Duchess decided to start with this strange tea party. Eliza sat at the table and wiped her tears with a handkerchief. The woman decided to implement her cunning plan. She told Rosalina that she was very happy to see her at her celebration. According to Eliza, a sumptuous table was also set, but no one came because the guests heard that Rosalina would also come. And Eliza began to cry again, as if she was very upset. Rosalina, smiling, said that nothing terrible had happened. There will be a party for two. As a gift, the Duchess handed Alina a bouquet of flowers. The woman could not hold back tears of gratitude now. Rosalina remembered the incident that happened with the fairy tree. The Duchess was awaiting the details of that day from Eliza. The woman, calling Rosalina her daughter, advised not to take everything too close to heart, because people are very cruel. She also noted that the Duchess was still quite a child who did not understand anything. Eliza believed that accusations from others would not bring Beatrice back to them. Rosalina threw herself into Eliza's arms and said that she was the only one who understood her. But as expected, Eliza played to the public. Rosalina asked if she could call the Duchess Mom. Eliza agreed without hesitation. Suddenly, this sweet idyll was interrupted by the maid, who announced that the Duke would soon be here. The man was angry that no one came to the feast. He even threatened that he would make these guests pay for this. Rosalina and Eliza began to explain to the Duke that social circles should not be pressured. Rosalina turned her attention to the pot of tea on the table. This tea had a strange smell and color. Herzog also noted that the tea has a different aroma and taste. According to Eliza, it was a healing tea. The father offered his daughter to try it as well, but the woman politely refused, citing the fact that she does not like medicine. Rosalind felt a little creepy. The woman suspected that it could be poison. Rosalina assumed with horror that Eliza could systematically feed Leodore with something. The Duchess decided that something had to be done. You can't sit idly by. Rosalina took the sign of the fairies in her hands and inexpressibly began to beg him to wake up. She succeeded in everything. The room instantly glowed with bright light. A fairy flew out of the egg, and it seems that Rosalina woke her up after a deep sleep. The Duchess was shocked by what she saw. After all, she had never seen anything like this before. The fairy asked Rosalina why the woman woke her up only now. As it turned out, the fairy had been waiting for this for a long time. The little creature wrapped its tiny arms around Rosalina. The Duchess was quite surprised to learn that the little fairy was waiting for her. Despite the fact that the fairy herself was like a pure cloud, in the book she is described as an evil spirit. It was the fairy who gave Rosalina bad advice, and every time she got her into trouble, even after she obeyed the fairy in everything, the woman was sentenced to death. Rosalina always thought that a fairy was a secret weapon. The Duchess was so tired that she decided to postpone all business until tomorrow and go to bed as soon as possible. But this little fairy didn't really want Rosalina to fall asleep right now. However, the Duchess managed to fall asleep. That annoying fairy had been waiting for the woman to wake up since the very morning. In the morning, Rosalina decided that the fairy could be dangerous because the Duchess did not know her true capabilities. The woman thought that it would be better to pretend that no fairy existed. She was very annoyed that this little creature was constantly flying in front of her eyes. Rosalina, having breakfast with the Duke, decided to pretend that it was an ordinary fly. The Duchess planned to hold a banquet soon. The father approved his daughter's intentions. The husband praised his daughter for her efforts. Rosalina looked fearfully into the Duke's tea. The fairy told Rosalind in her ear that this acarosia tea was poisonous. The woman did not know how to tell her father not to drink this suspicious drink. Although the tea seemed suspicious to the Duchess, she could not fully trust the fairy. The fairy continued to insist that Rosalina stop her father as soon as possible. The Duke said he wanted to give his daughter a present. Rosalina, after thinking, asked her father to share tea with her. The Duchess decided to say that she had not been feeling well lately, so a medicinal tea would not hurt her. To protect her father, Rosalina did an analysis of the ingredients. It turned out that there really is acarosis. The fairy was quite right. Acarosia is a very ancient plant. After using this plant, there is a feeling that the body is charged with energy, but it poisons the body. If you use acarosis for a long time, or mix it with alcohol, the heart will have a rather strong load, which will lead to death. Rosalina was upset. She decided to ask the guildmaster if there was an antidote to this plant. The fairy shouted in the ear of the Duchess that there is no. But, to Rosalina's great surprise, the guildmaster said that there was. The man advised the Duchess that the Duke should drink the ether potion. Rosalina had with her expensive herbs that she had recently received. She gave them to the guildmaster. The man sincerely thanked, but thought that there were too many of them. The fairy tried her best to convince Rosalina that there was no antidote for acorosis, and it never was. That Duchess, it seems, believed the guildmaster, not her. The Duke asked where the woman got these herbs, but Rosalina only smiled and wanted to keep it a secret. The Duchess had one request for her husband. The woman needed a ticket to Memento Mori. The guildmaster generously handed the ticket to Rosalind. Her eyes shone. She was infinitely grateful to her husband. Memento Mori is a gladiator playhouse known for its brutality. Rosalina knew how everything would end today. The winner is Rab, a gladiator of unknown nationality and age. Only the fifth gladiator fell. The giant managed to remain unscathed in all fights. No one dared to win against such a fierce opponent. The next participant was the new face of Memento Mori, Udar Kali. The audience began to laugh because they thought he was a weakling, because the man was quite thin. To make this event brighter, the host of this show prepared a special gift, a healing fragment. All guests of the show were pleasantly surprised. This crystal had quite a lot of power. He saved even from a mortal wound. Everyone in the hall wanted to be the owner of this miraculous stone. On this day, there were 9 gladiators left, including Kaylee. People were interested in which gladiator would be able to defeat the giant. Spectators demanded bets. They had to be recorded using a magical tool. The one who guesses will be able to get the healing fragment. One of the employees of the show approached Rosalina and offered her to make a bet. A powerful man named BYK is the real star of Memento Mori. He was also called the Invincible Cold Bull. Many viewers were sure that he would win, but no one knew how he would turn out. It was necessary to guess this. The battle was started. No one believed in the strength of this thin man. Kaylee versus the giant. It was an incredible sight. Rosalina sat relaxed, but only noticed that the man was very fast. The battle was intense. Kaylee defeated the giant. Rosalina knew that this would be the case, so she was not particularly worried during the battle. Rosalina felt goosebumps as she thought she and Kyle met their eyes. The woman looked at the man and could not believe her eyes. This man's real name is Calix Blake, the sole heir of the Blake family, who disappeared a long time ago. At some point, the heroine comes and saves him from gladiator fights. This is where the book begins. Right here, in Memento Mori. In fact, when the story had not yet begun, Rosalina thought that it would be better not to come here. The Duchess knew that if she did something wrong, the meeting between the main character and Calix might not happen. But the Duchess really needed this crystal. The fairy told Rosalina that she had been followed by suspicious people for some time. The men were clearly chasing her. This is probably because Rosalina won the healing fragment. The Duchess was sure that the men could not accept such an ending of the show. Rosalina tried to walk without thinking, but unfriendly men caught up with her. There were 3 of them. They demanded the stone back. The men explained to the woman that she was very naive and believed that she would just get the crystal, which is quite expensive. They stubbornly ordered to return the stone. Rosalind was scared, but she didn't show it. The woman gathered courage and said that she knew that they were paid for their work. But she, unexpectedly, offered the men a good proposal. Rosalina was ready to pay 3 times as much if they let her go. The men, not even wanting to listen to Rosalina, were determined to take the stone. The Duchess offered to pay them 4 times as much. But these people were adamant and said they would be loyal to the person who hired them. One of the men took out a knife. The Duchess was not going to speak up, so she quickly began to think about how she could keep the stone. Rosalina, smiling slyly, took out a stone from her pocket. Rosalina, looking at the healing fragment, said out loud that this legendary item is capable of curing any disease. The woman immediately clenched the stone tightly in her fist and scornfully asked if the men knew what would happen to them when they returned empty-handed. The woman behaved very confidently and seemed to have a strong spirit. Rosalina told the men how everything would be. The woman assumed that the person who hired them would simply refuse to cooperate with them, or in the worst case, kill them. Having said that, Rosalina, laughing, told the men that she was a good person, and in such a case would give them the stone. The Duchess quickly cast the healing fragment along with the fairy. The little creature helped the pebble fly very far. The stone fell right into the river that flowed near the estate. Men were surprisingly shocked by such a woman's strength. It was an incredible throw. The men were forced to dive into the water to search for the shard of healing because otherwise they would be dead. The cunning plan worked. The fairy picked up a pebble from the bottom of the river and hurried to give it to Rosalina. The fairy believed that she was a valuable being and should not be engaged in such matters. Rosalina wanted to sincerely thank the fairy for such a good job, but the fairy was still not there. It turns out that this little creature tricked her. Rosalina felt crushed. Raising her head, the woman saw the precious stone slowly flying towards her. The Duchess was incredibly happy and thanked the fairy. Suddenly, Rosalina saw Arzentian next to her. He forgot to wear a mask. The Duke took Rosalina by the hand and said that they had to get out of here immediately. The Duchess did not understand what was the matter, but the Duke said that he would explain everything later and pulled the woman with him. The unfriendly men were still in the river trying to find the stone, but their efforts were in vain. One of the men noticed that Rosalina had gone somewhere. The enraged man accurately threw the knife in the back, but not at Rosalind, but at Arzentian, since the Duke covered the woman with himself. Eliza listened to gossip that Rosalina's husband proposed a divorce, and she could not stand it, and stabbed her husband to death. The woman laughed, but considered this act funny. The woman, rather sternly, asked the maid whether this was confirmed information or just a hoax. The servant did not know what to answer Eliza. Rosalina helped the Duke to get to the doctor. He bandaged Arzentian. The doctor also recommended that the Duke rest more so that the scars do not start to bleed again. At the moment when the knife flew, Rosalina was quite afraid for her life. For a woman, the Duke was a true war hero. However, the Duchess could not understand what the Duke was doing in this place, and how he knew that the woman was in danger. Arzentian told Rosalind that he was feeling better, and that she could go. The woman really missed her husband, because they had not seen each other for a long time. But the Duke just looked coldly at the woman. All the same, Rosalina offered the Duke to go to bed. The doctor said to rest, and not to walk around the house. She felt her guilt, because it was because of her that the Duke was injured. Rosalina felt responsible, and wanted to take care of her husband. The Duke could not understand where the haughty Rosalina had gone. It's like a different person. He liked how the woman worried about him and tried to help him in the treatment process. Rosalina explained to the Duke that she was working hard to change herself. The woman handed the man a glass of medicinal drink. She also gently asked her husband not to treat her harshly and rudely. The Duke could not understand the meaning of his restrained and cultured behavior. The Duchess explained that at least it was a peaceful and quiet divorce. Leodore, who was cursed, slept peacefully. Rosalina entered his room. A fairy immediately flew to the woman and hugged her. The little creature was glad that Rosalina finally believed in her good intentions. Rosalina quietly asked the fairy what she thought of Leodore. After looking at the fairy, she replied that it was not a fairy curse, but rather a blessing. It turns out that the leaf fairy is making great efforts to restore Leodore, so big that it cannot show itself. Next to the man was a dropper with medicine. According to the fairy, this is not a medicine, but a very dangerous poison that enters Leodore directly into his vein. This poison poisons and spoils the blood to such an extent that a person dies in agony. It turns out that the fairy cleans this poison. Rosalina, holding the healing fragment in her hands, sincerely hoped that it would help Leodore. She put the stone to her husband and waited for a miracle. Rosalina wasn't doing well, so the fairy decided to help. Suddenly, Leodore opened his eyes. Servants came to Eliza's room to report that Rosalina was visiting Leodore every day. The maids believed that the woman was doing this in order to impress the Duke. Eliza demanded more explanation from Antony. So the servant said that the reason for the event that Rosalina is trying to arrange is to show everyone that Leodore shows no signs of waking up. There is no heir in the Brighton family, so the event will be the starting point to correct the bad image and seize power in the Brighton family. Eliza agreed with this assumption because she did not know what other motives Rosalina might have. The woman was angry with the Duchess, but did not wish her well. The events took place 5 years ago. The maid received a new title and became Lady Brighton. She had many jewels in her possession because she became the Duke's wife. But the man did not give the woman the necessary attention. Once young Rosalina wanted to tell her father something, or rather to ask. But unfriendly Eliza did not want Rosalina to act as she wanted. The day of the event, which seemed very far away, unexpectedly arrived. Guests gathered, and there was a lot of delicious food on the table. People whispered that Rosalina herself was here, and moreover, she was the organizer of the event. Baron Mulliot was present at the event. On this day, the man was dressed very elegantly. He wanted to win the heart of Mrs. Filesden, but not because of love at all, but because of money, or rather, because of 5 million. The cunning man knew that the Count had to pay his ex-wife a large sum of money. He believed that after marrying Rosalind, the money would be at his disposal. This fat man was very self-confident. He had plans to re-educate the Duchess. She should become a cute and fluffy cat. Baron Mulliot was determined today. Rosalina accidentally asked for a glass of wine for the Baron's clothes. He didn't see who did it, but he was not joking. The man tried to make Rosalina apologize, but the woman did not think, because she believed that it was he who should apologize to her. The Baron bluntly said that the Duchess's behavior was rude. This impudent man dared to say that after the divorce, no one would marry Rosalina if she behaved like this. After receiving the tears of the wind, creating a magic crystal, and receiving the Stone of Fate, the woman changed the fate of the heroine in the original, so that the energy of fate is no longer enough. Rosalina was trying to get electronic information about Baron Mulliot. The Duchess didn't like him very much. An arrogant man who was also unfriendly to everything. Baron Jones Mulliot is Alina Brighton's older brother, a man who can only boast of the successful marriage of his younger sister to the Duke of Brighton. It seemed to Rosaline that he was older than her father. Rumors reached Rosalina that he wanted to get engaged to her. The Duchess thought about it, and calculated that he was her maternal uncle. The woman was more than sure that even if her reputation was at the bottom, she would never marry this man. And then the Baron started talking nonsense. He noted that the woman was without a partner and condescendingly offered to touch his hand, in which case he would take pity on her and accompany her. Rosalina looked at the man with wide-open eyes. Rosalina, not listening to the Baron's nonsense, said that she was the hostess of this ball, and the man must have confused her with someone. The Duchess was upset that this man had spoken to her disrespectfully. She said she didn't need an escort. The Baron became a little kinder and offered to be her partner. Rosalina did not want to even see this insolent man, so she asked the guards to take him away. The man, who was being dragged out of the hall by security, tried to insult the woman and prove his point. A male voice called from behind that there was a match for Rosalina, but the Baron, saying that it must be some madman, continued to call the Duchess terrible words and humiliate her. That man was the Duke of Filesden. The Baron, seeing Arsentian, was almost speechless. Gossip and questions began to fly around the hall. What is the man doing here if he and the Duchess have separated? Rosalina was not very happy about Arsentian's arrival. She didn't invite him. The Duke hugged Rosalina. The man heard that the Baron had already made an offer to his wife. The Baron, out of desperation, had to say that it was a joke, and he didn't want to offend anyone. But the Duke was quite angry and did not believe in this nonsense. The Duke of Filesden tried to show his determination, so he pressed his wife as tightly as possible to him. The Baron apologized with tears in his eyes. Rosalina, with a smile, asked about her husband's beer business, knowing that he was in debt. Rosalina, having reliable information, began to accuse the Baron of participating in human trafficking with the aim of paying off gaming debts. Also, for kidnapping children of ordinary people and selling them to slave traders. Rosalina was shocked by how this man behaves. Behind him stood all the prestige of Lady Brighton. The Duchess proudly said that as a representative of the family, she would deliver the verdict of the court without the court itself. Enraged Rosalina could not stop. The woman said that she would use the fact that the stolen children were found in the basement of Baron Mulliot's estate as evidence. The Duchess ordered an immediate search of the premises. The Baron, not knowing what to do, decided to go on a verbal offensive. He claimed that Rosalina is a woman who returned to her family from a broken marriage. The man demanded a fair trial. Rosalina's father, hearing such a stormy conversation, decided to intervene and said that he fully and completely supports his daughter, and he also agrees with this verdict. The Duke knew that the Baron would not be able to threaten and contradict him. The Baron was silent in response. The Duke decided to continue the feast. Everyone present listened attentively to the details of the situation. The day before the banquet, Rosalina felt that something terrible would happen on the day of the banquet. The Duchess tried to tell her father something. The father interrupted his daughter and said that even if he is against something, he will not be able to refuse his daughter because they have the same blood. The emotional man explained that since Rosalina's return home, she has been engaged in business and the development of the family business, and the daughter really began to raise the reputation of the Brighton family. The Duke now believed and knew that people change. The man, being the center of attention, raised a glass of wine and greeted all the guests. He said that soon the snow would melt in the Brighton family and everything would be fine. The Duke told the guests that he would be grateful if they would all take care of the reblooming buds in the future. He publicly paid tribute to his daughter, thanks to whom today's feast was possible. Duke Filesden invited Rosalina to a dance. He was moved by the Duke's words. The man also saw enormous changes in Rosalina. Eliza was beside herself when she heard that Rosalina had disgraced her brother, and he is now in prison because of her. The angry woman blamed the maids for the fact that they calmly observed everything and did not intervene. The woman mercilessly began to beat the maids one by one, calling them names and saying that they were useless. One of the servants asked to see her youngest son for a moment, but received only a slap from Eliza for her words. Although the Duke invited Rosalina to the dance, the woman thought it would be right to give the first dance to her father. Argention stubbornly insisted. The Duchess thought it was more than strange to dance with her ex-husband, with whom she was in the process of divorcing. But the Duke gently took the woman by the waist and pressed her to him. Young people whirled in a magical dance. The Duke seemed to admire his wife. The Duchess accidentally said out loud that she understood why Rosalina so wanted to marry this man. The Duke, hearing these words, said that he wished to know more details about his wife. Rosalina only asked Argention what his purpose was. The woman was sure that he wanted to remind about the divorce. Rosalina explained that if the Duke continued, a divorce would be imminent. But the Duchess asked her husband directly if it is possible that he wants to get together with her again. Mrs. Brighton entered the hall. She thanked the guests for coming to her home. Rosalina, interrupting Eliza, said that today she represents this holiday and their family.